But the first fly I'm going to tie is called a cruncher. And it's really just a pheasant tail variation. I've you know, kind of modified it a little bit from its original form. I guess you could say it's primarily a, I don't know, it's more mayfly nymphy when you see what it's going to be, but it's just a real simple fly. And this is a fly, I'm tying it on a number 12 hook, 12-2X. It's very simple, and it performs well as a searching pattern, particularly if you've got bodies of water that contain calabatus. It has that kind of look, that mayfly nymph look, but it's also been a really good pattern for me. And I'll talk about it in my last presentation today, Tactics for Tough Days, is when you've got fish on the surface feeding on really little stuff. I was out with Dave Hughes a couple of years ago. He's going to take me to fish the Deschutes with him and Rick Hafley. I'm going to get 2 days of river fishing. I'm excited. I get 1 day of Deschutes, and then Dave, hey, want to go fish a lake? And well, I guess. So anyway, we ran into this hatch situation late in the afternoon. The fish are up on the surface. I'm just covering the hook shank with thread here. The fish are up on the surface, and they're feeding on this just ridiculously small chironomids that are coming off, midges. And Dave puts his size 1,000,000 fly out there and casts it out in the maelstrom, and I'm like, bugger that for bananas, because this fly landed, and who knows where it was. But what I've learned over the years is trout will, in those situations, will come up and feed, and then they'll drop down a couple of feet, cruise along, and come up. And they do it, the deeper they go, the better their view into the outside world is to see food, and a little bit of predator avoidance. So all I did, rather than do the size 22 fly, was I was fishing dry line long leader stuff, which is probably most of you know I like to do. And I just took off the beadhead pattern I had on the point fly, and I put this cruncher on the point, a size 12, and they're feeding on really small stuff, and then a small chironomid, and I caught fish all day by the simple principle of putting your fly where the fish are feeding. Right? So this rig allowed me to creep flies back through that top 2 feet of water, and I took fish most of the afternoon on a fly that, if you're a hatch master, was like not the thing to do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use this a little bit. This is just your dirt cheap saddle hackle. I'm just going to tie in a saddle hackle, just the fibers off the side. I'm just going to strip off not a very huge clump, just I don't count them, they just sort of eyeball look right. Sparse is always better. About half the shank length is fine, so I'm just going to offer that up, get it around. Coffee hasn't kicked in yet. And if it's a bit long, one of the beauties, once I've got a couple of wraps on it, it's in control. That may be a bit long. I can just pull on them a little bit. I still think that's too long. Pull on it some more. That's a little better. And then just secure these right up the shank of the hook. I like to keep things nice and smooth underneath. The exterior of your fly is most times a function of what's underneath. And just trim off the waist here, using my finger to push the bobbin out of the way. Usually in a demo I'll cut the thread at some point. Watch it fall to the floor.
That makes us feel better.
Well, I should do a whole show on just dumb things to do with a vise.
Yeah.
For ribbing, you could use wire. This is crinkle mirror flash. Love this stuff. It's kind of a really like a mirage opal. Good thing too is it shines, so when you drop it, you can see it. And I'm just going to take this, I'm going to hold it up on the near side, and I'm trying to be somewhat efficient with my thread wraps here, is every time I travel the hook, I'm doing something. Okay, so we go over, all the way down the side, I've got my ribbing in place. And then for the body is just a section of pheasant tail. So I'm just going to take a slip off the side here, I'm just going to pull the fibers vertically. I grabbed the wrong pheasant tail. This was, if you want fun, I'm not going to do this fly, but nodding pheasant tail for English hopper patterns. If you're looking for a real good way to get frustrated with fly tying, that's the way to do it. So I'm just going to take off a slip here, and I'm just going to turn them around, moisten the tips, trim the very tips off so they're even. Just get them tied in, keep your thread on a short leash, moisten them again, they're on top. And carry them forward to about the 3/4 mark. A little stub of something sitting there. And now I'm going to, I like to make my flies simple and somewhat durable. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking a little brushable super glue, put that aside, put the lid on it, and I'm going to take the pheasant tail and I'm going to counterwind it to form the body. Watch for the hook point. The beauty of this method too is if you happen to slip your grip, and I'll do it for demo, and please Lord I hope it works. Nope.
Yeah.
See it partially unwound, but truthfully if the glue is a little goopier, that's a fresh batch, it won't unravel because it's actually stuck. So I've counterwound it. I'm going to come up, hold it on top, whoops, over top a couple of times, and then a few in front for luck. Trim off the butt ends. Okay, now I put the pheasant this way. Now when I go with the rib, and this is more important I found with wire ribs, but I'm just going to come over. I get this crisscross effect that reinforces the pheasant tail, and this is more apparent when you're using wire ribs. And I'm just trying to go for, this is more of an attractive flash, a little emergence glow, a little standout in the crowd. You know, it's funny, I see a lot of tyers sometimes that tie flies, they're trying to be exacting imitations, and I don't know, I look at a lot of bugs and put flies beside our bugs, and they're pretty obvious which is what. Thank God fish don't notice that difference. And I always think that we're trying to make our flies and the way we present them the stupidest, biggest, dumbest, whatever, so they get kicked out of the gene pool, right? The fish eats them and moves on. The goal is not to hide our flies amongst 60,000 natural bugs, right? It's not hide and seek, it's catch fish, right? So we want to make our flies stand out a bit. I love pearlescent mylars, the Mirage opal mylars, little attractive flash, just to make it stand out. Now why I did that crisscross effect is I've reinforced the the pheasant tail rather, by gluing it down. And when you rib a fly, the common way to do it, the common discipline has always been to counterwind. But if you're going over the top to tie your ribbing down, right, if you counterwind, you're actually, if you're not careful, can actually loosen. When you tighten, it'll actually push the wire away. But if you wrap away from you with the wire like you do with your thread, when you tighten, it's going to further cinch that ribbing material around and make it more durable. So that's why I counterwind the body and wind the rib the normal way. Now the way the fly was originally done was to use peacock curl for the thorax, and you can still do that. But in recent years, you've seen this sort of scraggled fritz and all this stuff come over from England. Kent at Canadian Lamma now has this product called Brill, which is Straggle Fritz, because it's all, after working at Superfly, you learn that one product, Diamond Dub, is the molecular equivalent of Ice Dub. Okay, it all comes from the same place in Italy. And so this is the Brill, and it's kind of a neat little, you know, in hairline it's a micropolar chenille, and this has got the UV qualities into it, which, you know, is kind of all the rage, and lots of conjecture and discussion for hours on that. I throw it in my flies on the simple principle of how the hell can it hurt? So I'm just going to tie this in, and I'm going to make a little thorax out of this stuff.
Is that the small, or is that the...
That's it's right here. It's the 5mm stuff. And there's a host of colors. So the combinations with this are endless. And God, you can make scud bodies out of it. And it's just got, I don't know, it's just a little different. Stand out in the crowd. So we'll just pull that in. I picked kind of an olive coloration. It's a little different. Don't want to go too far forward. Keep your head exposed, because we still got a little hackle to go into this. And trim that off, just like that. So you can see kind of, these things will get wet. And then for the hackle, again, we're going to go back to our Indian cape. These are the dirt cheap capes. And we're going to pull off a hackle. I'm not, typically, so if you bend it, you could, if you wanted with a hackle gauge, but about 3/4 of the shank length's fine. I'm just going to hold that up, and I'm going to tie this in wet fly style. So that means I'm going to tie it in so the fibers sweep back. So the way I like to do that in this one is make sure this is the most sort of this side of the feather, the convex side, the most prominently marked or colored. Okay, so when I wind this in, the fibers are going to naturally flow back. It's kind of a subtle, I'm not looking for a dry fly. If anything, this is kind of more emerger-like. Okay, and I'm going to take my tying thread right up to the hook eye. I'm going to take a half a turn. Whenever I hackle flies, I've just got in the habit of doing this, is put a half a turn in to make sure it's positioned, then I attach my hackle pliers. Right? And I'm just going to go around, make sure that's positioned properly, and get about 2 to 3 wraps. That's all. Whoops. Yeah, time demo. Drop your hackle pliers. Okay. Thank God you've got the best hackle pliers Mother Nature can buy, and that's your hands. Lifetime comes in a pair, and they last a lifetime.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, close to.
Yeah.
Then I'm just going to tie that off, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold everything, including the tip, right back and build my head. And then if I pull down on this thread, because I've wrapped the stem back under, and just sharp snap, that will not come undone, he said, hopefully. And then all that's left to do is to, and I do this trick a lot, is just put the glue on the thread, and then just build that up, a couple of wraps, because that gets the glue where it wants to be. There's no risk of it getting all over the fibers, or, you know, in the case of bead heads, all over where it's not supposed to be. It puts it right where you want it. And then we just finish it. And if you want, if the fibers aren't swept back enough, you can just come in and give it a little pinch.